notacon.
You ready? Okay. I'm Mark Stanislav, and today I'm going to be presenting Get Smarty. It's actually going to be an interactive presentation, so if you actually have a laptop with you, I have a development server that Mitch has helped me set up, and we're going to let you develop and actually win prizes, so start developing. Before I get into this, I kind of want to make a couple notes which were on my slide, so I'm going to try to remember them. This is going to be an overview of Smarty. It's not going to be practical applications of Smarty, because it's a presentation layer. So I'm not going to show you how to web design. I'm not going to show you what CSS is or anything like that. It's pretty much just the parts and pieces that will allow you to create your own templates, which is the basis of what Smarty does. And I had a couple more things, but okay. If you actually want to log into the server, here's the information. Is anyone going to develop actually? James, prizes, Muchamis? Okay, good. So I'll write this down, and you guys. Oh, already there. Everyone good? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. First, I'll go over a couple basic things about Smarty. Smarty is a presentation framework for PHP. Inherently, that just means that you're only dealing with one layer of the program itself when you're developing software, as opposed to having all of your code echoing within your PHP. You're going to break it up into templates and your application code. This does different things for you, such as readability. When you're not looking through the code and trying to see where your function was for the echoing, where your function was for the CSS, where your function was for looping through that array to get your data, you have a lot more concise and clean code to deal with. So maintainment's a lot easier for anyone that has to actually look at your code if you're developing a public application. It's free and open source software. I actually want to thank the Smarty website, smarty.php.net, for posting that that I was talking here today. According to Froggy, they're actually our top referrer, so that's pretty cool. Also, it's insanely very quick and easy to implement and learn. I probably had about maybe 3 hours of reading the documentation, and I was starting to convert my whole web software over to Smarty right away. So the installation, as Mitch has probably found out, is pretty much just a copy and paste of a tarball into the PHP libs directory. There's not much more setup than that. The framework's extensible. It's based on plugins. Everything runs as a plugin, so you're not wasting any more memory to run anything that you don't need right then. You can load your own plugins in, which I'm actually going to show you a small example of how to create a plugin in Smarty. It's definitely going to make your life easier for the sheer fact that when you have a development team and you want to organize how to make the web design and make the PHP code interact correctly. Normally you'd be having meetings all the time, this and that. With Smarty, what you can do is basically tell the web development team for the design side of things the variables that they're going to need, and they can go ahead and make the templates with all the built-in functions, variable modifiers that are built into Smarty already. You don't worry about what they're doing, and all you have to interact on is the actual variable names, which has the array content or any data that you're passing over the website. And it's also the only thing I felt like talking about today. The biggest thing I hear from people is they understand that Smarty's a presentation layer, but they don't really understand why they'd benefit directly from using it. I don't make high-end application programs, but just for my small projects, it's actually easier. But the big gains are really from the software development of large projects. The huge rallying cry behind Smarty is to let the programmers program and the designers design. When you have to interact all the time and delegate different jobs of, well, I expected you to make a loop of this, why didn't you do that? Or your code's breaking my code here, or the designer wants to make his own loop and he writes a vulnerability for your website now, and there's just too much ground to cover between two different groups of people if you want to actually make stuff efficient. So this lets everyone do their job and not have to worry about anyone else's job. You can create templates insanely quick. You probably have about 3 lines of code more than you would normally in any like actual web design. The HTML you can just embed directly in. I'm going to go over the syntax pretty soon. You can see how easy it is to include anything you need, whether it's an array or a variable of any data, or if you just have like a PHP session variable. Everything is built in, so it's made for the ease of the web designer who wouldn't probably normally know a lot about logic programming unless they did JavaScript or something like that. But the general like HTML web designer, CSS designer, they're not going to know a lot about sorting that array out and looping through it and creating their own back end for it. So this is where Smarty comes in. It takes the burden off their shoulders and takes the burden off your shoulders, since you don't have to show them what to do. One of the coolest parts of all of this is that designers really can't break your programming code in the application end. They take the data that you pass over through your class, and that's extended into the templating. The templating is actually a compilation of your .tpl file, which is the template files, and you're actually going to make PHP files out of that, and it's all going to be seamless. You don't have to do anything past making the template file and instantiating that Smarty class. It has a lot of functions built in that you will want to program, but why waste the time? When you're actually programming high-end software development stuff in PHP or any other programming language, there's not a lot of reason to create that plugin to do new line to BR tags. It's a waste of time. You have a lot better things, I'm sure, to do. Otherwise, I'm not sure what you're actually programming. And one of the most important things for the high traffic sites are the caching of the templates. When you're dealing with the system resources of anything, pretty much, especially a web server, you have the MySQL queries, you have the PHP processing, CSS, anything. Well, CSS is client side for the most part, but anything that the system has to do, why make it do more than it really has to? So what the caching is going to do for you is, when you actually make that template where the template file is compiled into PHP, you can run that once every 30 minutes for the newest portion of the site, and then run the sidebar updates for the RSS feeds every like hour. So you're basically taking that static HTML that's being outputted and saving that. So, for example, when I was on smarty.php.net for the news, they actually had a typo in there, so I'm like, could you fix that up? They're like, sure. Just wait 30 minutes for our templates to update. Well, I realized, oh yeah, I guess it makes sense they're using their own stuff. So, but I actually know a couple of people who use this in high-end web applications, and they say that it saved them a lot of trouble, past not only having to do redundant databases just because the hits to the database were so intense, but just the overall traffic of the site. Why waste your system resources more than you really have to? Maybe that's because I'm an administrator, though, so I don't know. And the biggest thing is, show me what it actually does and show me who uses it. Well, Drupal, if you guys know kerneltrap.org, they're one of the people who uses Drupal. I guess that's Oops CMS. It's one of the bigger CMS projects out there, and a lot better than PHP Nuke and whatnot. There's bblog, which is PHP blogging. Psychostats, if any of your friends actually run game servers, they know about it, trust me. Citadels knows what I'm talking about. TikiWiki is one of the more popular wiki applications for web software. And 2 companies that I know the owner of, eNotes, has crazy traffic. They're like the Spark Notes for this web generation, basically. And then Found You Online is a social networking place that also does a heavy amount of traffic. So it goes to show you that this isn't something that's necessarily passing through. I also heard that people were porting over WordPress to it, which is a highly popular blogging software too. So that's pretty good news. All right, so what we're going to cover today is the basics: syntax, variables, templating, variable modifiers, which I'm going to explain what those are exactly, functions, creating and plugging, and then caching. All right, Smarty syntax, the delimiters by default, you can actually change these within the template file if you really need to. Like some people complain, well, my XML markup's getting screwed up by your your delimiters or whatever. Well, you can change them if you want. It doesn't matter. So basically the left and right curly brackets are what everything you're going to be calling within the template file is. When you're making a template file, and you'll see this a little bit later too, you basically just type in straight HTML all you want, and whenever you want to invoke anything within Smarty, all you do is throw the delimiters and toss in whatever command or variable or whatnot are you doing. So the variables, really standard stuff. The var name, you can call single items in an array, or if you have an array with separate, forgot the name, but if you have separate sections to each array, you can call it like that too. So everything's pretty standard, what you can do in other programming languages, especially PHP, since you're probably working with that. It's quite simple. Includes, another standard thing, just invoke what file you're looking for. And this comes in handy when you're working with multiple templates, and you don't want to have to throw up like 3 display statements in your Smarty class in the PHP file. So you just include the template within the file, like the header and footer, and then throw your main content in the middle, and just call that one file to display it within your PHP application. If then else, it's a little weird compared to, I guess, how you normally would think of an if then else statement. As you can see, it's instead of having the curly brackets on the outside of the if and the else, it's actually surrounding the sections. And then how you actually end off any Smarty that has a beginning and an end would just be slash and then the name. That's pretty standard, I guess. And then literals, in case you want to embed some code of Smarty and not actually have it compile through when you go through to actually compile the templates. That's how you can do it really easily. The folder tree, I just added the sliding because I thought it would really help explain when you're developing your applications what you need to look for. The templates directory is where every single template you make for that specific portion of the site goes. So you might have blog news, and then inside that directory you'd have templates _c, which is the templates cache. And whether or not you have caching on, it's going to create the cache because that's just how it works. The only difference with the actual caching mechanism is that it's going to be saving the cache instead of overwriting it automatically. And then configuration files, I'll show you just a quick example of this. They're basically just, they look like WinINI files pretty much. If you have the colors of the website and you want to just keep those in one succinct place and not have to go back and change like 20 entries in your PHP stuff, that's a great way to do that. The configuration files are not mandatory. The only thing that's mandatory are the template directory and the templates _c directory. One note to have is when you do the templates _c directory, make sure that it's writable by the web server. Since the web server is compiling the templates into PHP, it has to be able to write back that file. All right, any questions so far? No? All right, variables in Smarty. Like a lot of other programming languages, variables are your link to everything. Whenever you do pretty much anything in Smarty, you're always going to be passing the data through, because I'm not too sure what you'd be doing with Smarty otherwise. So you can hold single values, full arrays, whatever you want within the variables. If you have the need for a counter, which you can actually do without this, but for example, if you have the need for a counter, you can actually create a variable within the template. Say you want to loop through it really quickly or something. You also have you have that ability if you're so inclined. All right, you guys read that okay? Okay, cool. This is just a really quick basic example of Smarty. It's going to seem kind of weird, but I'm not going to have a lot of examples of the code, just because not everything is going to be applicable. I just want to get anyone who wasn't really familiar with PHP or programming in general a quick idea of how to write something like this. It's going to be up to you, obviously, to take what I show you and convert that into what you had originally, and transform your site from something that was munched together into something that's divided and organized. So in case you're not familiar with programming, which probably a few of you aren't, front row, Smarty framework include, basically that just takes the entire class for Smarty, tosses it in there, and allows you to start using all the abilities of it. For anyone that's not familiar with object-oriented programming, to instantiate a new instance of Smarty, just assign a variable, type new Smarty, and you're pretty much set up.